Welcome. My name is David Benedictus. Welcome back to CoolCouve here in Vancouver, Washington.
Hello, I'm Daria Ruggles. We're happy to have you back with us. Hello, David.
Hello. Today we have as guests local community activists, social justice activists, Kay Ellison and Mike Ellison. And we want to have a conversation today about what's going on in Vancouver, Southwest Washington, and the Pacific Northwest around social justice issues.
Welcome, you two. We're honored to have you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. Can you tell us how you both, either one of you or both of you, how you got involved in social justice here in Vancouver?
Well, we had been going to a lot of peace marches in Portland in the lead up to the Iraq War. And we realized, wow, there's nothing really happening in Vancouver. And then we went over to a meeting in Portland, a bunch of Quakers together, only about 10. And we realized that out of 10 people, 4 were from Vancouver. And why weren't we doing more in Vancouver? So we decided, you know what, let's meet. And so we started to meet, and we booked the downstairs community room at the old library. And when I was talking to the lady on the phone about who was coming, she said, "And what is the name of your group?" And we didn't have a name of our group. So I just blurted, "Vancouver for Peace."
Oh.
And that became our name just because it was so generic. And so that's how we started. And then we had, we decided, okay, so peace marches were in Portland, but now we're doing our thing. So we wanted to have a peace march. And so how did that happen? Did we have to go through the city?
Well, I think that, two of the people who were involved from the very beginning and did a lot of work were Edie and Gary Cotton. And if I remember right, on that initial march, they contacted the city and made all the arrangements for the work, for the route, and for checking what was okay and what wasn't. And so we started up at Clark College in one of the parking lots and went down to Esther Short Park.
How many people showed up for that? About?
My recollection, it was about 200.
On your first march? Wow.
Yeah, or more.
Wow.
That was that was 2003 about? So yes. that was a demonstration around the Iraq War issues?
Right. Yeah, the meeting that Kay was talking about over in Portland, it was Lou Scholl, who lives in Portland now, but lived in Vancouver, who was there. And he was the one that I remember saying, we've got to do something in Vancouver. So he kind of kicked us in the butt to get us going. And he was, helpful there at the beginning for a long time. Kay got on the phone and started calling people. And that's why we had quite a lot of people who showed up, for our first meeting. And then, Edie Cotton got on the phone, and she's an incredible caller. And so she got a lot of people, coming to that first march. They did a lot of work. The thing is, at that point, because it was right at the beginning, I mean, it was January 2nd or 3rd or something in 2003 when we had that first meeting. And the concern about us going to war with Iraq was a very, very live national issue at that point. So it wasn't something that was kind of unknown. People were concerned about it. There's definitely something in the public view.
Yeah.
So prior to that, were there other social justice initiatives going on in Clark County and Southwest Washington that people
Well,
were?
there must have been,
Uh-huh.
but we weren't as aware of them. There, I know I think it was the 80s, there was where people would go down and be across the train tracks while I think it was nuclear waste was being shipped to Hanford.
Uh-huh.
And so we know people that it was so long ago, they're not around anymore, but who did that.
Mhm.
And so social activism is way beyond us, but it's nice to be part of it.
Yeah, well, that was Jenny Cortez who told us about that, and because she was involved, had been involved in Unitarian churches in Vancouver for a long time. So so they've been involved in social justice issues for a long time. And a lot of other churches, I'm sure, were doing work on homelessness issues and feeding people, and I mean, been stuff. And the Sierra Club has been around.
Sure. Yeah. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So does Vancouver for Peace, like, do you have a specific mission? I noticed Mike's t-shirt. So how much do you join in and engage in some of these issues that are very much in the national news right now, taking place here also in Vancouver?
Well, Vancouver for Peace was, as a as a group kind of leading activities and stuff, other than the Peace and Justice Fair, probably was active, from 2003 to 2007, maybe in that range, in terms of, doing a lot of tabling on various issues and holding educational events. And we had film nights, we had kind of weekly demonstrations on street corners for a time. There was a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of people got involved in other particular issues and other groups, and some people got older.
I think one thing that really happened was it made people feel like, oh, what do I want to do?
Mhm.
And almost set them free to do that. One of the things that Mike just said that really happened was every Saturday morning, we would go down to Esther Short Park to the farmer's market, which was kind of new then. And we would bring a table, and then other people brought tables. And what had just been very ad hoc became an official part of being at the park. If you go down there, the farmer's market has the tabling area.
Yes.
So it's pretty cool.
It's the public square, right? It's the public square.
Right. And so I think that helped. And then, so that meant that certain groups were really involved. It gave them a place to be. And that's really what the fair has become. That we felt like social justice was really needing a place and also a celebration. And so we go down to the park, and we rent it once a year, and it's grown from, we had to work really hard to get 30 groups that first couple of years. And it's grown, and we had over 100 booths there a couple years ago, before COVID.
Uh-huh.
And so that we hope to be able to be back in the park again this fall, 2021. But last year we went virtual, and that's hard when people are used to just being able to, hands-on. And so we didn't have as many groups last year that participated virtually, but we have hope that this year we'll be able to do that.
There might be a whole explosion of celebration because we've all been held back. I'd love to take a step back, and can you please define for us what is social justice?
That's a good question. I think it means speaking out to do what is right for people. And it's a wide range. It can, we consider even environmental justice social. It affects you. So it's everything actually that is working for bettering the world, we think is social justice. What do you think?
Yeah, I see it with a broad lens also. And just, every person deserves a dignified life, and meeting the needs of people, seeing people have the ability to live meaningful lives as they wish, and looking at the things that are working against that and speaking out about those things and trying to work in, all kinds of different ways, to promote that, and the idea of human rights, is social justice. So I think we both see it in a pretty broad lens, coming from the idea of, just the dignity and the value and the uniqueness of every person.
So we're talking about addressing things like systemic racism or general inequity or unequal things that are existing within systems and how they affect people. So this kind of environmental justice, social justice, and there are so many. David and I were talking about, I don't know if you two have seen this film. It's called End of Poverty with a question mark. And the line that really stuck with me was, there are very poor people in the world because there are very rich people in the world, and that there is a system that is actually not broken. It's working very well. It just serves a very small percentage. And that's hopefully what we're trying to address when we think of this, people using their voice to stand up for those people without a voice.
Yes.
From what's been so glaringly present with the pandemic washing over us is it's an image of a tsunami just washing away the surface area, and showing all the inequity in healthcare and in who's a essential worker, and how do you support those people, or do you force them to go back to work without healthcare, without liability backup. And so there's all these issues that are surfacing, and then around the what is law enforcement's approach to people who coming out into the streets and demonstrating against these issues, and how did the police get militarized, and then, as you mentioned, climate change, and how that's an inequality issue because of where factories are located, or polluting environments are located next to poor neighborhoods. All those things. As a healthcare professional, I think about the social determinants of health. That it is where you live, in the environment you're drawing your water from, or you're planting your vegetables in, or the air you're inhaling, changes everything for you. Those are all things that are present to us now. And so I'm so thankful that we have a robust structure that we've created in Clark County where we can continue talking about those things.
When you're talking about, another thing that needs to be said about the origins of this kind of work, in Vancouver, is the NAACP was formed here, in 1940s.
Wow.
They've been active for a very long time.
Yeah.
And really, contributed to this community for decades and decades.
Well, I would love to interview, we would love, of course, to interview people from the NAACP and LULAC about their initiatives and how we can be allies for the glaring injustice. And one of the things that is so concerning to me, and why I think this is such an important movement here in Vancouver, as we struggle with what's systemic racism, what's institutional racism, how is it baked in, is to think about what's happening after the last 4 years and how people who normally would be silent about things are speaking out loud about and exposing their bigotry and their biases and trying to normalize it, which is so hurtful to me. And I can't even imagine what it's like for people who are in positions in minority populations, marginalized populations.
Right.
Yeah, I think, I know myself as a white person, I still have so much to learn, about our history, but it is, it's apparent that throughout our history, there are patterns that have happened over and over again. And one of those is that whenever, Black people and low income, white people have found common cause in their plight, that those that are in power in our country have worked hard to divide them and make sure that they don't work together.
Yeah.
And that pattern has happened over and over again. And we've certainly seen that. What had happened in the last 5 years or so is only another manifestation of that that's occurred over and over. There was another things that you brought up for me, another pattern that's important. It'll come back to me.
And while you're thinking, Mike, you just made me think about this this kind of disconnect. Like this idea that we are vilifying the most vulnerable in our population. And as you mentioned earlier, in order for us to be able to pursue happiness and have peace in our lives, we need to have this equity. We need to address this. And when I think about what's happening in Vancouver, that people are, on the one hand, we voted for Proposition 1, which is the low income, helping housing and all of that. And on the other hand, there's so much fear in that not in my backyard thing. And I'm wondering how do you think we can get people to address that divisive, that, divide and conquer, that disconnect?
So we don't have concerns about those people moving into the suburbs, which was what the lie that was coming out after the campaign and stuff.
Oh, right.
Those people moving back in, which I remember sitting comfortably in my neighborhood above Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles and watching the Watts riots happen, right? So there was that thing back in the 60s. And my parents got motivated by all that stuff happening. My stepmother marched in the last march in Selma across the bridge, and came back and did then started a fair housing movement in LA, along with other people. So that was what was happening in my living room when I was 14 years old, 12, 14 years old. And I think it makes a difference. Young people seeing other people out there doing this work. Right.
Exactly. Our oldest was in second grade in the lead up to for the Gulf War. And so we went to Portland for a peace march. And so she was at from second grade on
Wonderful.
involved, and she's just been something, a driving force. It's really great. So she went to India to she helped teach English even to some Tibetan monks. She's been in Palestine. She's
been in Northern Ireland.
Right, and she's now working on her PhD, but she's written some children's books for transgender people, and it's just amazing. You're right, David, that something that happened when you were a kid, it does affect you. So.
Well, yeah, and in terms of the social justice landscape, in Vancouver, Vancouver for Peace may have played a role in being more publicly visible in that regard. And there are, many, many groups that are active now, more so than in 2003. But, and some of those may have been encouraged by Vancouver for Peace, but there's lots of people that, are doing things independently. And there's, so many different things going on now. And the Sierra Club has been very intentional over the last few years that I've noticed it, and it may have been more before, but in promoting social justice within what they're doing, and pointing out the injustice that Dave was talking about where you live determines how much air pollution and water pollution and so on that you're exposed to, and that comes from long patterns of placing those kinds of industries where people were poor, and were people of color who were congregated in certain areas because of redlining and so on. So.
I just want to say one thing that I think makes such a difference now is there are social media things that people can do that right now in Vancouver, there's Facebook groups, Social Activist Hub, it's called, I believe, and Our Voice Vancouver. So there's different webs or Facebook groups that can post. I think one's called Women's March.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, it's amazing what social media has done to help people to learn about what's happening. And I think that's kind of what we were trying to do starting in 2003 or 4, we started. And so it's exciting to see that happening. But then on the other hand, there are the social media things that happen that are not positive.
Disinformation, misinformation,
Right.
hate.
Yes.
So what is your general feeling about when you speak about the landscape of Vancouver? How are you both feeling about what things have been like since you started versus now, and as we're moving forward?
I feel pretty positive, although we have to continue to work. But when I compare it to years ago, we seem to have a much more involved community, or the like on city council, it's more diverse. People are involved. I feel pretty positive. I feel like there's a lot of diversity in all sorts of places that weren't diverse before. But again, we need to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot of groups that are active, and doing great work, and that's really great to see. And there is a coalition of folks from many different groups that are, kind of an ad hoc group that gets together occasionally and is talking about dealing with the criminal justice kinds of issues that we have, and reimagining public safety, and and working, and there are people doing amazing work at a lot of different levels on that.
But it really needs to continue work, because look at the people being killed here that I don't remember that from before. Maybe I'm selective in my memory, but I don't remember police shootings like there are now. So I think, though, the political landscape for the nation is just reflected here.
Mhm. Yeah, I had that same question, Kay. In some of the literature I've seen, the move towards the cell phone with the camera on it has changed things, and then the request for body cameras on police officers, and then the idea of civilian oversight of police forces and accountability. The police unions are great. They certainly needed those to make sure that they had proper benefits and you could recruit quality people. On the other hand, they've become a little too protective of people, of individuals who don't meet the community standards for using good judgment and have good impulse control. And we found out that there isn't adequate training, for example, right? There was a New York Times article that just came out about the non-lethal measures, that police fire at people, like rubber bullets or the foam bullets and stuff. And most of them, if they have training, it's been a long time ago. It hasn't been updated. And in terms of the recent demonstrations, the New York Times article said most officers had no training in dealing with demonstrations at all. Their supervisors had very few. There was lack of coordination, and there was only 2-hour trainings on how to use the non-lethal projectiles, which has resulted in a lot of injuries to people and loss of eyesight. Here over in Portland, more recently, there's a number of people that got hit in the eye and had to have reconstructive surgeries, and then there's, so all of these things are the community, I think, looking at the institution and saying, well, that's not quite how we imagine we wanting to serve the community, right? It's serving the safety of the community. This, just staying on the police a little bit, it's sort of gotten to that position where it seems like the public is seen as an insurgent force or something like that that needs to be battled against. And you see all these militarized, thank you, militarized uniforms and padding and shields and shock shields. That came out down in the South. Those shock shields are used in prisons to keep for people who are acting out in their cells. I mean, so they've been testing this onto the streets against peaceful demonstrators. So all of that we have to have a reckoning about who. We're all together. It's our community. How we want safety. How can we reimagine that, along with inclusivity? Because one of the things, if you don't have people that look like you providing law and order, it doesn't feel like justice for people. And when I was working in the mental health system in the juvenile court, that was pretty clear that it was a very one-dimensional workforce.
Yeah, they're currently the Vancouver City, has a task force that's working with the recommendations made by PERF, which is a national group that came into Vancouver and prepared a report and made recommendations for, officer training and policies, and addresses some of the things that you're talking about. There are people from NAACP and LULAC that are on this city task force that's looking at those recommendations and how to implement them. And I'm very encouraged that those folks understand that the issues go beyond just, training, to understanding that there are structures in, the criminal justice system that don't really work for, for equitable treatment of all of us. And so that is, it's going through, a somewhat bureaucratic process, but I'm really hopeful about the commitment that those people have. And but these are hard problems to solve. We just have promoted narratives within our society of how dangerous certain people are, that really, they really aren't true, but they control, how we react. Back, I believe it was back in the summer, the Columbian did an article on the budgeting, of the Vancouver Police Department and the county sheriff, and kind of laid out the budgeting. It was a very good article. But the spokeswoman, I believe it's Kim Cap for the Vancouver Police Department, she was quoted in there saying how, police are called on to deal with so many social problems that they are not equipped to deal with and would really rather not deal with. We're talking homelessness, we're talking mental illness, we're talking, social issues. And then you had on an excellent guest talking about the austerity within our social safety net, that it just isn't adequate. It just isn't there. And, that is something that to my mind, that we've got to deal with. And the police, the way to reduce police violence is that police have less contact with people. People who are armed, and trained with how to deal with firearms primarily, those aren't the people we need contacting people in mental health crisis. And
mental health is a big, important thing that we need to address better. And yes.
I was part of the group. I was working for coordinated mental health services from 96 to 2001 in Clark County. And there was an initiative to bring in conflict resolution training skills to all law enforcement agencies in the Pacific Northwest, especially in the metropolitan areas here in Vancouver, Southwest Washington, and Portland. And so that was helpful, although you have to have a fertile ground to plant that into, supported by leadership. And that's an expectation, and it has to be rolled into also performance evaluation, so it's institutionalized and integrated into. And then also in terms of the civilian supervision. So it's the antithesis of the militarization. It's more, communication skills, personal relationships, community policing ideas. And so there's the austerity of the budget, so what do you pay for? So clearly police are the wrong tool. And they say, when I was working in mental health and juvenile justice, they said, we're the wrong tool for this. We need more help. This is the wrong tool. Picking up kids that are homeless and on the streets and stuff, and or domestic violence issues. and certainly mental health issues about how to communicate with people who are in a psychotic episode without moving to violence. And now, as someone who worked 40 years in mental health, right in the face of violence with no police backup, you learn what the communication skills are to de-escalate people. And it certainly isn't showing full uniform and tasers or weapons.
Shock shields.
Yeah, shock
And
shields and stuff like
And
that.
we had a guest, David, talking about how like there are programs that are working right now. I
Yeah.
believe it's Denver that Kat Meow Garcia, one of our guests, was talking about, where these people who are trained in mental health, like you are, David, they go out with water and a sandwich and what David called soft eyes, so that there was this humane, gentle approach to really wanting to know what's wrong. And as you said, Mike, or you said, David, it's like, how do you even want to talk to somebody who's all puffed out with their military uniform and looks like a RoboCop?
Mhm.
Well, you can't see their eyes. That's how we communicate, is through our eyes. And that's how, if that's one of the things that we need to remember is that we have such skills as human beings from hundreds of million years of living in community, of figuring out how to do conflict resolution in community and how to de-escalate things and to use different tools, which is, so we get what we pay for. If we pay for the back end approach, the downriver approach, then we're going to have all this extreme approaches and what would you call it, unattuned responses, right? So
Tone deaf.
yeah, tone deaf, unattuned. Right?
And
So,
also the idea of othering, right? If you can't
Yeah.
see someone's eyes and they're looking at you through a militarization and they don't have any other skills except military skills, which they say themselves, it makes it so easy to create the othering, which creates that division.
and what neuroscience say is that the othering comes immediately from our old brain. I mean, and it takes then the activation of the neural cortex, which takes people that are trained to downregulate and breathe and be present with the person rather than reactive, right? So we know what to do, just have to put the money in the right place. And along with that, around poverty, we have a few more minutes here. I just wanted to say something. I've noticed this coming across the emails of your discussing the Poor People's Campaign. How long has that been going on? I probably want to do a whole thing on poverty and Poor People's Campaign, but just to put a pin in it to come back to.
Yeah, the original Poor People's Campaign was the last thing that Dr. King was, was working on in 1968 when he was killed, and actually became an encampment on the National Mall in 1960.
Yes.
And it, with a message of, here we are, people of color and poor people from across the nation, and with a legislative program, that they wanted to see enacted to deal with poverty. And, it ended up not being terribly effective. But the recent Poor People's Campaign came really the first national actions were back in 2016, when they had, I think it was 8 weeks of going to state capitals to promote a program that is saying that to deal with poverty, we need to deal with these interlocking injustices in our society, which, one is systemic racism, just austerity, kind of budgeting. So, the poverty that people live in because they don't have healthcare, education, and so on.
And a living wage.
Yeah, environmental devastation.
Mhm.
because that's connected, as David was saying before. And a war economy
Yes.
that
Right.
takes, it takes over half of our income tax dollars go to, fighting, preparing for and fighting wars. And half of that budget, which is, goes directly into the pockets of defense contractors.
Mhm.
And that's
then,
why the police have so much military equipment
Mhm.
they're
Mhm.
using.
yeah,
It's
and
cheap.
so, and then the Poor People's Campaign, the fifth interlocking injustice that they identify is the false moral narrative in our country of religious nationalism. And that you have to address all of these.
Mhm.
And so they started promoting that across the country in 2016 and have continued. And there were a lot of things planned that didn't happen because of the pandemic, but they're still working. And there is a group in Washington. There are state committees across the nation in almost all states.
Mhm. So when I think about all of this, I think, oh, it's overwhelmingly complex. And yet there's a very, like, kind of like math, there's a very simple mechanism by which complexity emerges, and that basic inequity that hits every area of our life.
Mhm.
So I have a question, at least my last question for you, both of you, is people might be watching this right now and want to be able to show up or make a difference. How do the two of you recommend that somebody in Vancouver might show up and feel welcomed, and what should they do?
Well, one good thing with the pandemic was having us go virtual in a way. 50 of the 100 groups that normally come posted on our website, vancouverpeaceandjusticefair.org, all spelled out, Vancouver Peace and Justice Fair. They put little blurbs about their group and contact information. And so I think if somebody had no idea what to do, they could go to the website and just kind of shop
Mhm.
for a group that fits their interests. And I mean, there's a lot of variety. And so I think somebody could do that and then see and contact those groups.
Mhm.
Yeah, and there was 100 in 2019, over 100, right? In
Right.
20
Right.
So that's on the website, the Vancouver for Peace website, or the Vancouver Social Justice
Vancouver
website.
Peace and Justice Fair.
Yeah, it's Vancouver Peace and Justice.
Justice Fair. So it's on that website. We'll have the link.
Okay,
Mhm.
cool.
Mhm.
That's a wonderful way to plug in, and I think that is an example of how just the idea of building a coalition of people has grown over 17 years,
Something like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
18 now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
the idea behind the fair was after a year and a half of you know uh, a lot of protest activity and educational activity and so on, but we wanted to do something that was more of a celebration of what people were doing for peace and justice. And so that's the idea behind the fair, is to be a day where we can celebrate what we're doing,
right.
and expose people to all the things that are going on.
And it is a celebration. I love the music and the mimes and the color, all the diversity there, and groups that I never knew existed. Like you said, it's a way to plug in. I plugged into so many groups just by coming to the tables and picking up their brochures. It's just a wonderful celebration of community and diversity here in Vancouver.
Yeah, and if anybody would like to be involved, go to the link, vancouverpeaceandjusticefair.org, because really we welcome there. I mean, there's so many different things that you could do. So
Yes.
Yeah, and the Peace and Justice Fair also has a Facebook page, and Kay kind of keeps that going.
kind of.
So this would be a good time to log on to that to begin to add your voices and your energy to the upcoming fair in whatever shape or form this summer, hopefully outside in Esther Short again.
Right.
Because it really is so much fun. I remember the first time I went on, it was in Portland, and I was kind of scared, you know. I had no idea the energy, like you were saying, David, and the music and the joy that comes. And the fact that you're really doing something worthwhile and positive and you're doing it together. There's this weird feeling, like, I guess because it's in some powers that be's best interest to keep us isolated and feeling impotent and disempowered. And then when you show up physically and you see all of these people, there were little kids, there were old people, there were all different mobilities, all different colors, all different everything, all showing up together. To me, the outside vibrated with that joy. So yeah, showing up is fun.
Yeah, it's a deep well that we can draw on from for many, 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 many experiences in years to come. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your experiences. We'd love to have you come back with other people and talk about what's happening, maybe, you know, the planning for the fair coming up or just beforehand, and things like that. And certainly,
Thank you for having us. This was really fun.
It was
welcome.
wonderful.
It's
Mike,
very
did you have one more? Did you have another thought there, Mike? That any last thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Well, one couple of very quick things. One is just, and David was alluding to this, that, you know, through Vancouver for Peace and through the fair, we have met so many people that have become, you know, so important to us. I mean, just the relationships that you make with people when you're out doing things that you're passionate about together, and just, I mean, just fantastic people that we really cherish so much. And, you know, like Dave, you know, we met through that. And the last thing I would say is just, you know, the elephant in the room that we still have to all work on dealing with here in the United States to deal with social justice is white supremacy.
Mhm. Yeah, white nationalism, white supremacy, and the unfortunate coupling of that with white Christian nationalism, with it seems like an oxymoron to me, but I don't.
Yeah, well, it is to us because we're Quakers.
So that's something that we'll continue the conversation on. We did a program a while back called The Biology of Hate, the Neuroscience of Resilient Communities. And there's a lot of great research on that. And guess what? Vancouver for Peace and Social Justice Fair and those 100+ groups are the answer to that. It's about people seeing each other and doing shared work together over shared values consistently, time after time. But it's about seeing each other doing that work and being shoulder to shoulder. It makes a difference. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll post this. This will go up on Open Signal channel, and then also on our YouTube website, our YouTube channel shortly.
Kay and Mike Ellison, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.